Hi, I'm Ryan Burgess. I'm a software engineering manager at Netflix. And I created this course because management is challenging and there's no one way to approach these challenges. In this course, we'll cover how to set your team up for success, how to approach hiring for your team, how to give and receive feedback to help your team grow, and ultimately become a high-performing organization. This course will give you a strong foundation for becoming an effective technical leader. The team charter is really, trying to help tell you about what your team does. And I think this is a great exercise to do with a team and think about why you exist. It brings clarity on the team's mission and goals. And this clarity helps the team, but it also helps partners and stakeholders, maybe leadership, to just understand why that team exists. And it gets that alignment. I oftentimes think about, there's ownership of different things that are getting passed around in a company and being like, oh, Jem's team should own this because his charter says this, or his charter says this. They probably shouldn't own that. And so it helps bring clarity and alignment for people across the business. It also has team accountability. This one's really good. Your team has a better sense of what they should focus on. And even when requests come to them, they're kind of saying, that doesn't quite fit our charter. Maybe another team should do this. Or they can raise that flag versus just opting to do the work, because you want to make sure that you're taking on the right things. So I like to think about the exercise, breaking it down from a high level. There's a good book called The Advantage. These questions aren't exactly pulled from the Advantage book, but it talks a lot about that and saying focusing really high level on who are our customers? What do we own as a team? What are we responsible for? What don't we do? That's an important one, right? We don't do or own the UI. We only use leverage the API and own that. And so when a request comes to us to do something on the API or on the UI, that's not us. And it's very clear and people know that. Why does our team exist? I mean, it could be just to bring joy to customers. It could be to make money. I don't know. But you want to have a good clarity statement around why you exist as a team. And then how do you operate? What are things that you want to do as a team? How's the culture work within your team? What makes you successful? And then, how are you successful? How do you know you're doing the right things? So we're going to run through an exercise where we will actually go through and start to brainstorm a team charter. What I want you all to do is think about your team that you're on now, maybe an existing team, maybe just some made-up team, and think about answering those questions about why you exist, how do you operate. And this is a great exercise I've done with my team in smaller breakout groups. And what's really cool to do it that way is you kind of bring it all back together, and it can be in bullet points and going through that way. Ideally, at the end of the kind of the end state that you have, it's very clear, concise, 1 to 2 sentences for each of those questions. But by doing the small breakout groups with the team, you get to kind of see different perspectives and oftentimes a lot of commonality, sometimes completely different things that come up, but it's been really helpful. I know at first when I started doing this, I was like, I don't know if this is that helpful, but I've done it a few times now to know that it is bringing a lot of clarity for the team. So I will show you the exercise here, which is available as a Google Doc. It outlines the questions, and really, like I said, it can be bullet form, focus and think about as a team, what you do as a team, and think about that. And we will circle back after that. Welcome back from doing the exercise of creating your team charter. So hopefully you all found that useful. I'm curious for the audience, what are some of the things that you thought about? What was something that was maybe difficult to think about for your team?
So I have 2 teams right now, And I started by trying to think of the smaller team that I have. And I think what this was very illuminating for me for is I've lacked a lot of the clarity on team charter and team goals and objectives for that team. We have kind of a duality of projects with a platform that currently supports the majority of our business and a future-looking platform merging with our parent company in Bangkok. And the smaller team is responsible for a kind of nebulous goal of figuring out how we get onto that platform in Bangkok. And so with a small team with kind of a very big scope like that, it's been very difficult to find that kind of team charter. And so this was helpful for me in finding a framing device for perhaps having a conversation with my directors to figure out how can we rein that in, how can we find something achievable and useful to the company that's within our means.
I like that. And I definitely even recommend hearing from the team too, of what do they think of that too? And I think sometimes taking a step back can be an interest. Even this is a good exercise that's something, even if you have a team that exists already, which oftentimes you are, like even as a new manager coming in, like the teams that might already existed for years, right? And so I think sometimes just taking that step back can really help and hopefully bring that clarity too. Any other thoughts?
I work at a 20-person startup, so the question of what don't we do is kind of hard to answer, given that we have one engineering team. But for that one, it's kind of thinking through what do our stakeholders do and how do we kind of interact with them of what do they do that helps us deliver software at the end of the day. So we have a data science team, so kind of working with them. And then since we're in a regulated space too, we work with a lot of regulatory and quality, and we have to produce deliverables for those, but we don't end up, packaging those up at the end of the day and sending those things out to the FDA and things like that. So kind of even just making it clear of what those different boundaries are to kind of answer that one, since the team itself does do everything else for the product.
I love that. So you're just responsible for everything. Yeah. But I hope that like what I heard there too is that it's almost like maybe even prioritizing. It's like, thinking about, well, maybe it's not what we don't do. There's probably a couple, but it's even like, how do we think about the priorities? And maybe there are certain ones that, for the regulatory things, you're like, we can't miss that, right? Like it's like that for the team to have that clarity. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah. When you're like, we just kind of do everything.
I had the exact same problem with writing and I feel like with that, it's almost like, because we operate as two large teams, I feel like we almost need to break down the team into smaller teams and actually give ownership to things, so that there is more of that, or it's less nebulous. These people own this part of the platform, because I was really struggling with the what don't we do. It's like we, again, do everything. So.
Right. Yeah, and I like that too, is it could be just like certain people on the team might be the like, you own this. And so it's like, you might not be responsible for the like 100 other things that someone else's part. And so even having some of that clarity, that can sometimes get, in my mind, a little bit too deep in some ways. Maybe it's, I think, more for speaking to partners, but maybe that is good, is like they can even have, I go to Joe for this and I go to Sally for this, right? Like it does bring them that clarity, and that might change and evolve over time. Mark.
Online, someone said, or Natalie said, I'm realizing from the charter exercise that my last team could have probably clarified our OKRs and vision. We were an acquisition team that were thrown into a lot broader concerns because of this.
Yep. I have been there many times. And even what I said, I think at first when I thought of doing this team charter, I was like, that's kind of useless. Like I'll admit, and it feels like that even when I first like think about it. But once you start bringing that clarity out, it really helps. I've been on teams where you struggle to have that identity, or you're trying to do too many things and you don't deliver what you should be delivering. And so I think that is a really good call out. All right. Well, this is the portion where we are going to ask a manager. I don't have all the advice, and I love to lean on peers to help me think about it maybe a little bit differently. So we're going to be talking on the topic of performance management and measuring performance. So I'm going to lean on Jem Young to help me, a seasoned manager and peer. Jem, I have a couple questions for you that I'd love to kind of hear how you approach them. So what have you found useful to know that your team is performing, they're doing the right things? Like, how do you get signals into that with your team?
Yeah, my views maybe a little different. I found it useful to know. I can see how my team's performing if they point out problems. Like, I totally don't mind complaining. I complain all the time. I believe in the power of venting to make yourself feel better. But they also bring solutions too. So they're like, man, this thing sucks. Here's what I think we should do about it. And like, I see that cycle starting to build up where people start solving their own problems and they bring those to the team. That means like the team's performing because like they're spending their time on the right things. That's a really strong signal for me. Another one is in terms of performance, if people are giving me feedback and they feel comfortable, like, hey, Jem, what about this process here? I think it's like, maybe we shouldn't do stand up this time in the morning, or maybe we should move this meeting because people aren't really even in the office at this point. And people feel comfortable doing that and looking at the team as a whole. I feel good about the team performance because it means like our culture is really healthy where they feel comfortable doing that.
I love that they're helping you do your job better too. Like, it's like, I saw this point that maybe you didn't see.
Another one is it's kind of on the measurement side, but it's a little bit different. So we use OKRs on the team. They're still fairly new, but one thing I've found is I say, here are some objectives. What else? What are other objectives? And the team can come together and create their own objectives, and they agree on that. It says a lot about the team health and culture and performance, where they're like, okay, we agree these are obvious problems, and then they write their own key results and their own timelines and milestones and things like that. I don't have to do that. That says they own these areas, and they're comfortable in these areas, and that frees me up to do other things. But more importantly, if they don't hit those targets that they set, then we can have a conversation, not in any blameless way or in a totally blameless way, but you're the one setting these targets. Like, let's figure out what's going on and what we can fix. And it's more collaborative at that point. And it's not me dictating. It's not them dictating. It's just we're coming together and figuring this out. If we can do all that and the team's functioning, that means they're performing really well. And I'm free to focus on other aspects of the role.
Yeah, I think in those ways too, you're helping them feel more engaged too, right? Which, like, feeling engaged with the work and not just, well, my manager told me to do it. That's a huge difference, right? And feeling like you can own some of those outcomes, and like that can be really helpful. I love what you said too about like people bringing problems to you. I love that. And I'm actually comfortable with even the venting. Like, I appreciate when someone has like suggestions or possible solutions and they're looking for my advice on them. But sometimes it can be just like, Ryan, I'm just frustrated. I'm so frustrated with this process that we're doing. I don't have an answer, but it's not working. Can we talk about it? Like, and then the two of us can have a bit of a conversation around that. And maybe I'm unaware of some of those things. So I really love that too, because having that open dialogue and having people, feel comfortable to have that conversation is huge. Like, that's what you want, because they have a different vantage point than you do as a manager, and you want them bringing up some of those points.
I like you said engagement. Like, I don't think we even brought that up, but yeah, if the team's engaged and people are engaged, that says a lot about how well they're performing and how well they're not stressed about things necessarily. Or if they are, they're engaged enough to bring that to you or bring that to the team. And between engagement and something like OKRs that they've set themselves gives you it's really not that hard to measure at that point if your team's performing or not. There's always the part on how are your partners viewing the team and things like that. But that's my job as a manager to kind of go out and do that. That's not at a team level. But all those are I think people make seeing if my team's performing well probably too complicated. A lot of it you can just feel as a manager. You can feel, just like if you're driving down the street and your car's not running right, you can feel it. And you couldn't always say like, oh, it's this or that. You just like know something's off. And that to me is kind of the instinct of a good leader, is you can just feel when things are going well and you can feel when things are not.
Yeah, those gut signals, it kind of give you a signal that I need to dig in a little bit here. I think another thing that you'd mentioned too that I really liked was I'll kind of frame it in a little bit different way, but you're allowing your team to like decide what metrics are important for those OKRs and really show up to speak to the work is, yes, they're engaged, but it also demonstrates their depth of knowledge in the space too. I think that's really helpful because having a high-performing team is they understand it. They understand the details deeper than you do in some areas, and they should. So I think that's a really good call out. I really like that one as well.